What's up guys, my name is Jedith, and this is a follow-up video for the Demon Hunter hero talent tree called Fel-Scarred. This is a brand new tree that we got the other day, so I'm not going to go over the fundamentals and stuff like that. We already went through all of that in my other video. I'll put a link to that up in the corner. You can go watch it. This video is going to be talking about very zoomed in topics when it comes to the Fel-Scarred tree. There's some discoveries that I was able to make now that logs are actually working. I have logs from different builds, from playing a more demonic build. I also tried playing a throw glaive build, similar to what we're actually playing on live at the moment, and there's a lot of good information that we can gather from these logs. So we're going to be digging through that today, and I think you're going to be pretty impressed because some of the discoveries are really good signs for how this is eventually going to work once we actually get the war within. So the very first thing that I want to just start with right out of the gate is that it was confirmed that the animation for Demonsurge does exist. It is there. You can see it. It's like a blue sort of a cloud. That is confirmed to be a placeholder. All of the visuals that we're seeing on the alpha right now for Demon Hunter are placeholder. They will be getting replaced with something hopefully a bit more impressive and flashy. Now that confirmation was only for the Demonsurge proc. We don't have confirmation that there will be new animations for some of the new empowered abilities that we get. Abyssal Gaze, Consuming Fire, and Sigil of Doom. But one can probably assume that we will get animations for those as well. So the next thing I want to cover, the mysterious 10% damage stacking buff that is at the end of the demonic intensity tooltip. As I said in my last video, it's pretty misleading because it doesn't actually work the way that this tooltip is indicating. So the tooltip just says Demonsurge damage is increased by 10%. How it really works is whenever you use Demonsurge, you get a stacking buff of 10% increased damage each time, going up to 5 stacks. If we I-beam, then we have 2 empowered abilities here. I'm going to use Annihilation. We get 1 stack of the buff. We use Death Sweep. We get another stack of the buff up to 20%. And then when you fall out of demon form, you lose that buff. So what you would want to do is I-beam. So you're going to empower your Annihilation and your Death Sweep. You'll use both of those to get 2 Demonsurges and a 2 stack of the buff. From there, we don't have any more Demonsurges to use, so that's when we would use Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is going to give us all of our empowered spells, so that's Annihilation, Death Sweep, Sigil of Doom, Consuming Fire, I think it's called, Consuming Flame, I don't know, and Agonizing Gaze. Is that what it's called? Whatever, the I-beam one. So that's a total of 5 empowered abilities that we can use. At the end of it, we'd get a 5 stack of the buff. How we thought it worked at the start was that the buff that you would get from using a Demonsurge wasn't applied until after the damage of that Demonsurge that was proccing it landed. So you would use your Annihilation, it would proc Demonsurge, and after that Demonsurge landed, you would then get the first stack of the buff, making your next Demonsurge do 10% increased damage. And then you'd use your Death Sweep. That Death Sweep would be affected, the Demonsurge from the Death Sweep would be affected by the previous 10% buff. But then once that Death Sweep Demonsurge landed, you'd get your second stack of the buff of 20%, but then you'd have nothing to apply that 20% to. So that's when you would, meta, and you start spending your next 5. But at the end of your 5, you would use your final one, your final Demonsurge, and you'd get the 5th stack of the buff, giving you 50%, but then you have nothing to spend that buff on. So that is actually not how it works. Now that we have logs, we can look into it, and we can see, we'll go to damage done, we'll go to events. So this is just a quick boss from a dungeon. It took 48 seconds to kill this boss. Very quick. But what we can do is we'll go to used our first Demonsurge from Annihilation. We pressed Annihilation, and that procced a Demonsurge. And in fact, that first Demonsurge did get the Demonsurge buff. So this first Demonsurge did in fact get the buff that we thought wasn't applying until after that Demonsurge landed. What this means is that each application of Demonsurge benefits from its own buff, meaning your first Demonsurge gets 10%, your second Demonsurge gets 20%. Then you meta, and then you start spending your next 5 Demonsurges. The 5th one is actually benefiting from the 50%, which is fantastic. It was very strange and awkward if it was going to work the other way, that we thought that was the way that it was working, but this makes so much more sense, and yeah, really happy to see this. Now, the next thing I want to look at in this log is our damage breakdown. So this was using a general low mover build, basically this build right here where, you're taking a Cycle of Hatred. I think I might have had Shattered Destiny in that specific dungeon, any means necessary, and it's just very focused on, I-beaming, using Annihilations and Death Sweeps, and just very basic. You are Vengeful Retreating to get initiative, but other than that, you're not Fel rushing for damage or for, any buffs. It's very like plant and blast type of gameplay. If we look at the damage breakdown, I-Beam is right up there. I-Beam is doing a ton of damage, which is great to see because for the past, I don't know, couple expansions, I-Beam has essentially just been a tool. It's been a utility just to get you in demon form. It did no damage, but it was essentially a 40-second cooldown, like a buff that you pressed every 40 seconds. It wasn't about the damage it was doing, but it was about the utility that it brought you, which would have been, you know, empowering your death sweep and your annihilation. So it's great to see that I-Beam is actually doing damage now. And now Demonsurge. Demonsurge is all the way up here, you know, third on the list. And this isn't even actually how much damage Demonsurge is going to end up doing. What we have to remember when we're looking at this is it's still registering as fire damage. So Demonsurge did 9% of our overall damage in this dungeon, and it is still only fire damage. It's not converting to chaos through any means necessary yet. So if you look at AMN, it would increase it by, right now it's saying 38.7%. That's because I have 48% mastery. So if we add another 38% on top of Demonsurge, on top of what it's doing already, that's going to bring it probably well past death sweep. And the other thing we have to remember is that because it is not chaos damage yet, it's not being affected by chaotic disposition. What chaotic disposition does is your chaos damage has a 7.77% chance to be increased by 17%, occurring up to 7 total times. So that's just another like general increase to any chaos damage that we're doing. So that's going to be pretty significant once Demonsurge actually converts to chaos damage. This is going to be a ton of damage. It could potentially be our top damage. So this is really exciting to see. The other thing you'll notice here is that Sigil of Flame is pretty high up in the list of what blasted and what didn't. And this is because I was pressing Sigil of Flame pretty often. Reason being, I had Student of Suffering, where Sigil of Flame can apply Student of Suffering to you, increasing mastery by 14.4% and granting 5 Fury every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. So what this really does when you use it in practice is it gives you an 8% mastery buff, which is great, right? Because that's just giving you more mastery, which is feeding into any means necessary, which is converting your fire damage, your Demonsurge damage to chaos. And it's going to make Demonsurge do so much more. Now, one thing to note about Student of Suffering, the buff that this gives, is if you use it back to back, right? If you use a sigil, you get the buff, then you use meta to reset it, you use sigil again. It doesn't extend your buff or it doesn't give you a double stack. It just increases it back up to 8 seconds, which means that you definitely want to spread it out. In terms of an opener, you want to try to follow the layout that I gave in my last video. Again, if you haven't seen that video, link is up top, where you start your opener with a sigil, get the buff, do the majority of your opener within that actual buff from Student of Suffering, and then you're going to meta again and apply it whenever it falls off. In my testing, you were able to get a death sweep and an annihilation off after your meta before that first buff fell, and then you could apply it again with your next sigil. And if we look at our buffs here, we can see that Student of Suffering had a pretty decent uptime. We had 24% uptime on that buff. And, you know, there were obviously times where I missed a few casts so we could probably get even better uptime on Student of Suffering, getting even more uptime on that mastery buff and just increasing our overall damage. I think mastery is going to hold a lot of value in the War Within. I would assume that we're probably going to use like mastery enchants on our weapons, all these types of things. Again, this is going to come down to simming. I might be completely wrong in my prediction here, but we'll have to see. Now, the other thing I want to point out is the talent Burning Blades. So what it is supposed to do is your blades burn with fel energy, causing your Chaos Strike, Throw Glaive, and auto attacks to deal an additional 10% damage as fire over 6 seconds. So this essentially is the talent Fel-Scarred, where your Throw Glaive causes targets to take an additional 100% damage dealt as chaos over 6 seconds. It's pretty much copy pasted, except it's working off of different abilities. This is working off Chaos Strike, Throw Glaive, and your auto attacks, and it's only converting 10% damage as fire over 6 seconds. Now, how this is going to work is that fire damage is going to get converted through AMN into chaos damage. But there's a problem with this right now. If we look at the logs, we'll notice that Burning Blades is pretty low damage at the moment. Something is wrong here. And if we look at the tooltip for it, it just says Throw Glaive causes targets to take an additional 100% of damage dealt as chaos over 6 seconds. So this is what I mean by it's like a copy paste of Fel-Scarred. So this isn't correct, the tooltip. The damage feeding into this in warcraft logs is not pulling damage from all of the appropriate abilities. Like it's not pulling damage from annihilation, or if it's not pulling damage from auto attacks, or, you know, whatever it may be. And it is still just fire damage, right? We can tell by it being red, it's still fire damage. So this, hopefully, once everything gets sorted, will be higher up in the general, like, breakdown of abilities. 1.17 mil over the course of an entire dungeon seems incredibly low. So hopefully we can get that fixed. There is one problem that we know for certain that maybe I'll be able to show you here. So the tooltip says Chaos Strike, right? It is very particular to Chaos Strike. It does not work with Annihilation, which I can guarantee you is not intended. Let me get the buff off. Okay, there we go. So you can see that I pressed Annihilation, it hit, but then it did not apply Burning Blades. And you could have also seen that in the debuff bar on the target dummy. It did not apply Burning Blades. So that's a problem. We need this to also work with Annihilation, especially because with this build and with this hero tree in general, it encourages you to stay in demon form, meaning your Chaos Strike is never Chaos Strike. Your Chaos Strike is 85% of the time Annihilation. That needs to be looked at and adjusted, and hopefully this will be a lot more damage than we are currently seeing in the logs. I just want to quickly talk about how this build in particular, or something along these lines, felt in a dungeon. In the past, when we've played Cycle of Hatred or Shattered Destiny builds, it's felt pretty bad in dungeons or in keys because the entire build is based around using your GCDs, using every free global to use abilities that would then further reduce the cooldown on I-Beam to keep you in demon form. In a dungeon, this is tough because there's a lot of downtime, mobs die quickly, there's a lot of running to and from packs. Every second lost is just a higher chance to end up falling out of your demon form. In the past, it was very bad and it felt really bad to play these types of builds in keys. But what this talent tree accomplishes is that it actually makes it less punishing for you to drop out of your demon form, because when you drop out of demon form, that means you have the opportunity to I-Beam again and get back into demon form, which you can then use your Chaos Strike, sorry, your Annihilation and your Death Sweep for the first time in that demonic window to proc Demonsurges. Because remember, if you watched my first video, I explained that because Demonsurges are only procced the first time you use an empowered ability, if you extend your demonic window by I-beaming, you're not getting Demonsurges. So this talent tree is actually rewarding you for letting demon form drop and then I-beaming again to get back in demon form, which then allows your Annihilation and Death Sweep to proc Demonsurges. So let's go here. We're gonna I-beam. We're gonna proc our first 2 Demonsurges. Then I'm gonna meta. So I get these 5 Demonsurges to use. We'll do Annihilation, Death Sweep, I-beam, Sigil, and then see Immolation Aura still isn't quite up. So there we go. So now when I use my empowered abilities here, I'm not getting more Demonsurges because it only counts from the first use in a meta or a demonic window. So now that it's dropped, I'm out of demon form, I can go ahead and I-beam, and now I get Demon Surge again from these 2 abilities. So the fact that there is actually some downtime in dungeons allowing you to drop out of demon form is a good thing. So if we go to this log and we look at our buffs, you can see our meta uptime was about 44%, which isn't that bad. Realistically, it wasn't that bad. And you can see these are all the times where I was able to proc Demonsurges. And these longer chunks of data here are usually where I pressed meta and I was able to get 5 Demonsurges in a row. So TLDR, this build actually felt pretty good to play in dungeons. So from there, I had the idea, I was like, okay, this is feeling good. How would it feel to play a build that's akin to what we're actually playing on retail right now? You know, taking the throw glaive talents, inertia, rage fire, any means necessary, essence break, you know, VRing. How would that feel with this hero talent tree? So I'll put up some footage here of me actually playing that in a dungeon, and I'll also show you some logs. Now, this is the damage breakdown of a dungeon with, actually this is 2 dungeons combined of using that build. So you can see Immolation Aura did a ton of damage, same with Rage Fire, and this is because we took the talent Flamebound instead of Student of Suffering. Now there is still the bug where you get the Student of Suffering buff whether or not you're actually talented into it or not, but we have to try to just ignore that for now. But with this build, with the Ragefire build, actually I'll just switch my talents to it so you get sort of an idea. With this build, I did take the Flamebound hero talent, which actually helped out quite a bit. So it increases the radius of Immolation Aura by 2 yards, and a 30% increased critical strike damage bonus, which really helped with Rage Fire. So you can see Immolation Aura cranked, Rage Fire cranked, and this is with mobs dying incredibly fast. So you know how bad it feels when you have a big Rage Fire banked up, it's about to explode, but then the mobs just die right before it actually blows up on them. That was happening to me all the time in these dungeons, so this could be even higher if the mobs are actually living a little bit longer. And Throw Glaive is also including Soul Scar. This build would play a little differently in the War Within because we don't have our tier set automatically throwing those glaives for us with our Blade Dance. You have to kind of decide, when are you going to prioritize pressing Throw Glaive to throw them? When are you going to prioritize spending your Demonsurges? How this build would play in the past would be that you would I-beam, you would do your Essence Break, and then in AoE you would always Death Sweep, but then after that in AoE you would fill, instead of using Annihilation inside of your Essence Break window, you would just spend with Throw Glaive. Because Throw Glaive and the damage you're getting from Soul Scar outweighed the single target damage you were getting from Chaos Strike or Annihilation. But now we have this weird problem where pressing Annihilation is also proccing a Demonsurge, which is pretty substantial AoE damage. So a lot of times I found myself actually capping on Throw Glaive charges at 2 charges, and I couldn't get around to actually pressing the button as much as I should have. So there's definitely going to be a logic as to like when you prioritize pressing Throw Glaive over other things, when you want to prioritize spending your Demonsurges. It's going to come down to simming. I think simming will really tell us what the answer is there. If you want my honest opinion, this build felt very clunky to play, and it was a little overwhelming at times, and truthfully, I don't think it was even worth it. So let's compare boss damage between the two builds. First boss we'll look at is the Darkness, and this is the final boss of the Kobold dungeon. Was one that I ended up using meta on, so that's going to be a good comparison. So this is the Throw Glaive build, and then let's pull up that same boss with the more demonic type of build, where I also used meta, so it's even. With the demonic build, I did a total of 9.67 million damage in that boss fight. The Throw Glaive build, I did a total of 8 million damage, so lower single target damage. There is some cleave on this fight too, but you can tell right away, like, I just did more damage with the demonic build. I-beam damage was high, Death Sweep damage was high, Annihilation damage, and Demon Surge, exactly what you would sort of expect with this build. And then if you go to the Throw Glaive build, we had I-beam, Death Sweep, Demon Surge, and then Chaos Strike, Annihilation. You can see Throw Glaive is super low. I did try to press it as much as I could, but again, I was faced with the issue of, do I want to spend my Demonsurges or do I want to spend my Throw Glaive? And you would think pressing Throw Glaive would be helpful because Throw Glaive is feeding into Burning Blades and it's feeding into Soul Rend, but truthfully, it just didn't do what we thought it would. Let's look at a different boss. Okay, so let's look at Old Waxbeard, and this is a very high AoE heavy fight. Like, there's just a ton of little ads all the time. So you would probably assume that the AoE, Throw Glaive build is probably going to do better, right? Total damage of 17.59 million damage with that build. And if we go over to the demonic build, 17.33. That's pretty dang close. That comes down to a couple crits, maybe just better positioning when it comes to, my Demonsurges and my inner demons. Maybe a few inner demons missed, because that can happen if mobs move out of the way. That could have been like one extra Demon Surge or one extra Death Sweep could have been enough to like just get us there. So it's impressively keeping up with the Throw Glaive build. So if we take the two builds and we compare the same trash fight that is right before one of the bosses in the dungeon, you can see my burst is pretty high. Like, I was bursting upwards of 1 million damage with this one. Twice I went over the 1 million damage mark, and in this one with the Throw Glaive build, there's a bit more sustained, different types of damage, but that one I did also just get up past 1 million, but then had a lot more downtime. Honestly, in my opinion, guys, I just enjoyed playing the demonic build way better. It was easier. There was less buttons to press. I wasn't sweating the entire time. I wasn't doing math calculations, trying to line up different damage buffs and stressing when to press Throw Glaive and when to not press Throw Glaive. I mean, in the demonic build, I guess I was backflipping to get initiative, but you know what I mean. It was just a much more chill experience, and I hope that we can carry on just using this build in all areas of the game. Mythic Plus, raids, everything, because this is everything that I've been missing when it comes to Havoc gameplay. It's getting back to that BFA style, which, some might argue that was boring and, that those were like the brain dead times of Havoc, but hey, I think this is a nice change. We've been stressing for too long. I hope this actually works for the future. So let me know what you guys think. Are you excited? Is this making you more excited for the war within? If you guys like this video, give it a like. Make sure you sub to the channel. We are getting close to 30K. There's going to be a lot more war within videos and Havoc Demon Hunter videos coming over the next few weeks, so stay tuned. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time. Peace.